They took from her even the clothes on her back. "I'll take you home," said the cowboy. Clara had always believed that life in her small town was simple, predictable, and safe. She lived in a little house on the edge of town, the kind with a small garden where she grew flowers and vegetables. Her days were quiet but full of small joys. She liked walking through the dirt roads in the early morning, listening to the birds sing and greeting neighbors she had known since childhood. Clara's life was not filled with riches or adventure, but it had comfort, routine, and a sense of belonging. She worked at the town's only grocery store, a modest building where everyone knew everyone else. People trusted her because she was honest and kind. She liked helping the elderly with their groceries and always offered a smile to the children who passed by. She had friends, though not many, and she loved the quiet evenings at home, reading by the window as the sun set behind the hills. But everything changed. One evening, a day that started like any other. Clara had finished her shift at the store and was walking home, carrying a small bag of groceries. The sun was dipping below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of pink and orange. She enjoyed these walks, the cool breeze brushing her face, the soft sounds of the town settling down for the night. On that day, however, a sense of unease settled over her, though she could not understand why. As she walked down the deserted street near the outskirts, she noticed a shadow moving quickly behind her. She turned her head but saw nothing. The street was empty, and the houses on either side seemed lifeless. Her heart beat a little faster, but she told herself it was just her imagination. Perhaps it was the fading light. Perhaps just the wind. She tightened her grip on the bag of groceries and continued walking. Suddenly, a voice called out from the shadows. It was sharp and commanding, and it made her freeze. "Stop!" the voice said. Clara turned and saw a figure stepping out from the darkness. Her heart raced, and a cold shiver ran down her spine. She wanted to run, but her legs felt like they were glued to the ground. She realized with a sinking feeling that she was alone, far from the safety of the main street and the houses of her neighbors. The figure approached quickly. Clara could see now that he was a man, tall and strong-looking. He moved with purpose, and there was something in his eyes that made her want to shrink back. She clutched her bag tightly, but she knew it was not enough. She was alone, and there was no one around to help her. Fear gripped her tightly, making her chest ache and her breath come in quick, shallow gasps. The man spoke again, his voice low and insistent. Clara could not understand why he had singled her out. She had never harmed anyone. She had never taken more than what was rightfully hers. She tried to step back, to put distance between them, but the street was narrow, and he blocked her path. She felt cornered, trapped in a situation she had never imagined facing. Her mind raced, trying to think of a way out, but nothing came. The man reached out, and Clara instinctively pulled back. The groceries she had been carrying fell to the ground, scattering across the street. She could only watch helplessly as her small bag lay in pieces, the fruits and bread rolling into the dirt. She felt a deep sense of loss, more than just the food. This was a piece of her normal life, something she had carefully maintained, now ruined in a matter of moments. She wanted to cry out, to scream, to call for help, but her voice caught in her throat. The street was silent, and she knew that even if she shouted, the sound would not travel far enough to reach anyone. She was utterly alone. The reality of her situation pressed down on her like a heavy weight, making her knees weak. She tried to steady herself, to stand tall, but the fear made her tremble. The man took a step closer. Clara could see the hard lines of his face, the shadow of his jaw in the fading light. She could not understand what had led to this moment, why someone would do this to her. She had always been careful, always kind, always respectful. She had never caused harm. And yet Here she was, vulnerable and alone, facing someone who had the power to take everything from her. And then it happened. He reached out and took her bag from her hands. Clara felt a rush of panic. It was not just about the groceries anymore. It was about control, about the knowledge that she had no power in this moment. She tried to step forward, to retrieve her belongings, but he was too fast. He moved with precision, with the confidence of someone used to getting what they wanted. She felt a pang of helplessness so sharp it cut through her, leaving her dizzy and frightened. The man's eyes were cold and unfeeling. He said nothing else, only moved with purpose, taking more than just her bag. In an instant, Clara realized that she was losing not just her possessions, but her sense of safety, her sense of being able to protect herself. Fear surged through her in waves, making her feel as if the ground beneath her could give way at any moment. She was entirely alone, entirely at the mercy of someone else. By the time he finally stepped back, Clara was left standing in the middle of the empty street, her arms shaking, her chest heaving with rapid breaths. She looked down at what remained of her belongings, scattered and dirty, and felt a hollow ache in her heart. She had nothing left, no groceries, no bag, nothing to hold on to except the clothes she wore. Even that felt fragile now, like it could be taken away at any moment. She felt exposed, vulnerable, and entirely unprotected. Clara sank to the ground, her legs too weak to hold her upright. Tears welled up in her eyes, though she fought them back. She did not want anyone to see her like this, broken, frightened, and helpless. She wanted to vanish, to disappear into the darkness where she could feel safe, where no one could take anything else from her. But there was no such place. The street was empty, and the town that had always felt like home now felt like a place that could turn its back on her at any moment. Hours seemed to pass as she sat there, trying to make sense of what had happened. The sun had set completely, and the town was bathed in the soft glow of lamplight. The streets were quiet, the houses dark. Clara felt a deep loneliness settle over her. She had been robbed, yes, but it was more than that. She had been stripped of her sense of safety, her trust in the world, and for the first time she questioned whether she could ever feel secure again. Her mind wandered back to her childhood, to the days when life felt simpler and safer. She remembered the laughter of her friends, the warmth of her mother's embrace, the feeling of running through the fields without a care in the world. Those memories now felt distant, like they belonged to someone else. The person who had just taken everything from her had left a mark deeper than any physical loss. It was a wound to her spirit, one that left her questioning her place in the world. As the night deepened, Clara realized that she could not stay on the street forever. She had to find somewhere safe, somewhere to regroup and think. Her legs were stiff, her body exhausted, but she forced herself to stand. Each step felt heavy, each breath a struggle. She had no idea where she was going, no idea who could help her. The town seemed different now, larger, lonelier, and filled with shadows she had never noticed before. She wandered through the quiet streets, hoping to find a friendly face, a light in a window, or someone who could offer comfort. But the town slept, and she found nothing but silence and darkness. Her heart ached with a mixture of fear and sadness. She had always believed that kindness existed in the world, that people would help each other in times of need. Tonight, that belief was tested. She did not know if she could ever trust again, if she could ever feel safe in her own home or on her own streets. Exhausted, cold, and frightened, Clara eventually found a small park on the edge of town. She sat on a bench, wrapping her arms around herself to keep warm. The wind rustled through the trees, and she shivered, feeling the bite of the night air. She had lost everything, and yet she still had herself, her mind, her memories, her will to survive. That thought small and fragile as it was, became a tiny spark of hope. She would not give up completely. She had to survive, to find safety, to reclaim the life that had been taken from her. And so, as the night stretched on, Clara waited. She did not know what the morning would bring, who she might meet, or how she would begin again. But deep inside, beneath the fear and despair, there was a quiet determination. She would not let this night define her. She would find a way forward, even if she had to take it one small step at a time. The first light of dawn barely touched the town when Clara stirred on the bench. Her body was stiff, her muscles sore from sleeping in the cold night air. She shivered as the chilly morning wind swept through the park, rustling the leaves and sending a shiver down her spine. Her mind was still foggy from exhaustion, but the events of the previous evening were impossible to forget. She had been left alone, vulnerable, and afraid. Every shadow now seemed to hold a memory of that fear. Every empty street reminded her of how powerless she had felt. Clara knew she could not stay in the park forever. She needed help, a safe place, someone who could offer comfort. But where could she go? Her small house had always been a place of peace, but after what had happened, even returning there felt uncertain. She didn't have anyone nearby she could trust immediately. Tears pricked her eyes as she hugged her knees close to her chest, feeling the weight of loneliness press down on her. She had no food, no belongings, and no protection. Yet, despite the fear and sadness, a small part of her refused to give in. As she sat lost in thought, the faint sound of hooves striking the ground reached her ears. Clara looked up, startled. The sound was steady, calm, and almost soothing, cutting through the tension that had settled around her. At first she thought she might be imagining it, but then a figure emerged slowly from the edge of the park. A man on horseback was riding toward her, the horse's gentle steps echoing softly in the morning air. The man was tall, wearing a wide-brimmed hat and a simple, dust-covered jacket. He rode with a relaxed confidence, yet there was a kindness in his posture that made Clara feel, almost instinctively, that he meant no harm. He pulled his horse to a stop a few feet away and studied her for a moment. "Are you all right?" he asked, his voice calm and steady. There was something in the way he spoke, a warmth that contrasted sharply with the cold night she had endured. Clara hesitated. She had learned the hard way that not everyone could be trusted. Her instincts screamed at her to move away, to keep distance. But the way he looked at her, without judgment, without anger, was disarming. His eyes were gentle, steady, and seemed to see her not as a victim, but as a person in need. Slowly she nodded, unsure if she could speak. I'm fine," she said, her voice quiet, almost uncertain. The man dismounted from his horse and stepped closer, keeping a respectful distance. He noticed her tattered clothes and the dirt on her face. "You've had a rough night," he said simply. Clara felt a lump form in her throat. It was rare to hear someone acknowledge her pain without blame or reproach. Most people would have looked away, whispered, or assumed she had brought misfortune upon herself. Yet this stranger, a cowboy by the looks of him, had stopped. He had noticed. I don't know where to go," Clara admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. She felt both embarrassed and relieved. The words tumbled out, carrying a weight she had been holding inside all night. I don't have anything. And I don't know anyone who can help me." The cowboy nodded thoughtfully, as if understanding more than her words could say. "Then come with me," he offered, his tone firm but gentle. "I'll take you home." Clara blinked, surprised.
Home?
She repeated, her voice shaky. She had no home right now, not in the way she had once known it. Everything she had been building for herself had been taken, leaving her with nothing but fear and confusion. Yet there was something in his voice that made her pause. It was calm, patient, and free of any hidden motive. For the first time since the night before, she felt a glimmer of hope. I don't even know you, she said, her fingers clutching at the thin jacket she wore. How can I trust you? The cowboy offered a small, reassuring smile. You don't have to trust me all at once, he said. Just enough to take one step. That's all I'm asking. You need somewhere safe right now. I can help with that. Clara studied him for a long moment. His presence was calm, steady, and there was no rush or pressure. She thought of the long night, the fear that had gripped her, and the empty streets that offered no comfort. Slowly, she made a decision. Okay, she said finally. I'll go with you. The cowboy extended his hand, and Clara hesitated for a second before placing her trembling hand in his. It was a simple gesture, but it carried a sense of safety she hadn't felt in hours. The horse whinnied softly, as if sensing her fear, and the cowboy guided it closer so she could climb onto the saddle behind him. He made sure she was steady before lifting himself onto the horse. As they began to ride, Clara felt the wind on her face, the steady rhythm of the horse's steps grounding her. She was still scared, still shaken, but there was a strange comfort in moving forward rather than staying trapped in one place. The cowboy didn't speak much, letting the silence be gentle rather than threatening. Every now and then he glanced back at her, offering a small smile or a reassuring nod. You don't have to say anything, he said quietly after a while. Just hold on and we'll get you somewhere safe. Clara nodded, grateful for the silence as much as the words. She thought about how small her world had become in the last 24 hours, how quickly fear could take over. And yet here was someone offering help, not judgment, not criticism, just help. The simplicity of that act felt almost miraculous. As the morning light grew stronger, the landscape around them slowly changed. The empty streets of the town gave way to wide open fields, dotted with wildflowers and the occasional tree. Clara's eyes widened at the beauty of it, a quiet reminder that life could still hold moments of peace, even after tragedy. The cowboy guided the horse carefully along a dirt path, explaining gently where they were going. This is my place, he said. It's not much, but it's safe. You can rest, have something to eat, and figure out your next steps. Clara felt a mix of relief and nervousness. She had no idea what awaited her, but the promise of safety was enough for now. She allowed herself to relax slightly, leaning into the rhythm of the horse's walk, letting the warmth of its body and the steady hands of the cowboy ground her. As they rode, the cowboy shared small stories about life on the land, about the mornings he spent caring for his animals and the quiet satisfaction he found in simple work. Clara listened, letting his words distract her from the fear that had haunted her. There was a gentle humor in his stories, a way of finding joy even in hard times. She felt a smile creep onto her face, a small flicker of hope returning. At one point, he stopped and pointed to a distant hill. See that? He asked. That's where I keep the garden. It's not much, but it gives me food and something to care for. Life isn't always easy, but there are still good things to hold on to. Clara nodded, her gaze lingering on the green expanse. For the first time since the night before, she felt a sense of possibility. The world wasn't all danger and fear. There were still people willing to help, places that could be safe, and moments that could bring comfort. By the time they reached the cowboy's homestead, the sun was fully up, casting warm light across the fields. The small house looked simple but welcoming, with smoke curling from the chimney and the sound of animals in the yard. Clara felt a cautious optimism rise in her chest. She didn't know what tomorrow would bring, but for now, she had safety, shelter, and someone who cared. The cowboy helped her down from the horse and led her inside. The house smelled of fresh bread and warm wood, a stark contrast to the cold, empty streets she had wandered the night before. He offered her a seat and a warm drink, and Clara felt the tension in her body slowly ease. "You're safe here," he said quietly. "You can rest, eat, and gather your strength. We'll figure out the rest together." Clara nodded, tears pricking her eyes once again. This time they were not only tears of fear, but of relief, gratitude, and the faintest glimmer of hope. She had survived the night, and she had found someone who could help her begin again. For the first time since the terror of the previous evening, Clara felt that perhaps life could still hold kindness, warmth, and safety. She didn't know what the future held, but for now, she was not alone. The morning air was crisp, filled with the soft sounds of bird song and the distant rustle of leaves. Clara had spent the first few hours in the warmth of the cowboy's small home, drinking hot tea and eating some bread and cheese he had offered. It was a simple meal, but it tasted like safety, like a small victory after the long night she had endured. She felt her strength slowly returning, though her heart still carried the weight of fear and uncertainty. The cowboy, whose name she learned was Jacob, had been quiet but attentive. He never asked questions that felt intrusive, never pressed her for details about the events that had left her so vulnerable. Instead, he allowed her space to breathe, to gather herself, and to regain some sense of control over her own life. There was a calm authority in his presence, a sense that he knew how to handle difficult situations without causing more harm. Clara found herself watching him with a mixture of curiosity and cautious trust. After breakfast, Jacob stood by the door, adjusting the straps of his saddlebag. "I think it's time we get you to a place where you can start fresh," he said. His tone was gentle, yet there was a quiet firmness in his voice that left no room for argument. Clara nodded slowly. She knew he was right. Staying in the town, surrounded by memories of the previous night, would only keep her trapped in fear. She needed to move forward, and for now, Jacob was the person helping her do that. They stepped outside, and Clara took a deep breath of the morning air. The sunlight was warm against her face, and the field stretched out endlessly around them. The landscape was beautiful in its simplicity. Rolling hills, scattered wildflowers, and the occasional tree standing tall against the sky. Clara felt a strange sense of wonder, as if the world she had once known had transformed overnight into something both daunting and full of possibility. Jacob helped her onto the horse, making sure she was steady and comfortable. She noticed how calm the animal was, how it seemed to understand her fear and moved with gentle assurance. She held on to Jacob lightly, still feeling a mixture of hesitation and trust. He adjusted his own position and nudged the horse forward, and they began their journey. The first few miles were quiet, broken only by the sound of hooves against the soft dirt path and the occasional chirp of a bird. Clara's thoughts wandered as she looked at the scenery, trying to imagine what life might be like beyond the town that had brought her so much fear. She felt a small spark of hope. Perhaps, she thought, this journey could be the beginning of something new, a way to reclaim her strength and independence. After a while, Jacob spoke, breaking the silence in a way that felt comforting rather than intrusive. "The road ahead isn't always easy," he said, "but sometimes the hardest paths lead to the best places. You'll see." Clara nodded, listening carefully. His words were simple, but they carried a weight of experience. She realized that he had likely faced many challenges himself, and yet he moved through the world with patience and calm. It was a quality she admired, even if she didn't fully understand it yet. As they continued, Jacob pointed out small details of the landscape, teaching her to notice things she might have overlooked before. "See that tree?" he said. "It's been standing there for decades, through storms, droughts, and all sorts of trouble. It's still here. Life can be like that, strong even when it feels like everything is against you." Clara looked at the tree, tall and sturdy, its branches reaching toward the sky. She felt a strange connection to it, a reminder that perhaps she too could endure hardships and still grow stronger. The thought was comforting, and for the first time in days, she felt a small sense of peace. Hours passed as they rode through the countryside. Clara began to relax, leaning slightly into the rhythm of the horse's movement. Jacob was a steady presence, never rushing her, never making her feel unsafe. Occasionally, he would share small stories from his life, about the animals he cared for, the simple joys of tending a garden, and the satisfaction of hard work. Clara listened, absorbing the calm confidence in his voice. It was a stark contrast to the chaos and fear of the night she had endured. At one point, they stopped by a small stream. Jacob dismounted and led the horse to the water's edge to drink. He gestured for Clara to do the same. She knelt by the water, cupping her hands to take a sip, feeling the coolness refresh her in a way she hadn't expected. The simple act of drinking from the stream, surrounded by open fields and clear skies, felt like a small victory over the fear that had consumed her. Jacob watched her carefully, ensuring she was safe. "Sometimes," he said quietly, "we have to take small steps to regain our strength. You're doing that now." Clara looked at him, her eyes reflecting both gratitude and lingering uncertainty. I don't know how to thank you," she admitted. "You didn't have to help me." "You could have ignored me." Jacob shrugged, a small smile on his face. "Helping someone in need is never a burden. We all need a hand sometimes. Today, it's my turn to offer mine. Tomorrow, it might be yours for someone else." His words resonated with her. Clara realized that kindness existed even in a world that could feel cruel. She had been reminded of fear and helplessness, but now she was also seeing the other side: compassion, patience, and the quiet courage to help someone in need. It was a lesson she would carry with her, a memory that would strengthen her as she rebuilt her life. As they continued their journey, the terrain began to change. The fields gave way to gentle hills, and the path became narrower and less traveled. Clara noticed the beauty of the changing landscape, the way the sunlight danced across the hills, the sound of birds echoing through the valleys, and the fresh scent of wildflowers carried on the wind. It was a new world, one that felt both intimidating and full of possibility. Throughout the day, Clara and Jacob moved at a steady pace. They stopped occasionally to rest the horse and stretch their legs. Each pause gave Clara a chance to reflect on the journey, on the kindness she had been shown, and on the strength she was discovering within herself. She realized that this journey was more than just moving from one place to another. It was a path toward healing, toward reclaiming control over her life. Jacob never pressured her to talk about the night she had endured, but he offered small reassurances when she seemed tense.
"You're safe now," he would say.
"Nothing can hurt you while we're together. Take your time. There's no rush." Clara began to trust him more with each passing hour. She started to speak more, sharing small details about her life, her dreams, and even her fears. Jacob listened attentively, never interrupting or judging. His presence was steady, grounding her and giving her the courage to open up in a way she hadn't been able to since the night before. As the sun began to set, they found a small clearing to rest for the night. Jacob led the horse to graze while he built a simple fire. The warmth of the flames and the smell of burning wood created a comforting atmosphere. Clara sat nearby, feeling a sense of relief and safety she had not known for hours. "I'm glad you trusted me enough to come with me," Jacob said softly, watching the fire. "Not everyone would have." Clara nodded, feeling a mixture of gratitude and determination. "I'm glad I did," she admitted. I don't know what I would have done otherwise." They ate a simple meal, sharing food in silence and occasionally exchanging small smiles or words of reassurance. The quiet companionship was healing in its own way, a reminder that even after fear and loss, connection and kindness could be found. As night fell, Clara lay down on a blanket Jacob had provided. The stars twinkled above, and the gentle sounds of the night surrounded them. She felt a sense of calm that had been absent for so long. The journey had been long and tiring, but it was also the first step toward reclaiming her life. With Jacob's quiet support, she began to feel that perhaps, despite the darkness she had faced, she could find light again. For the first time since the terror of the night before, Clara allowed herself to hope. She knew the journey ahead would not always be easy, and that challenges still awaited her. But for now, she had found someone who cared, a place that felt safe, and the courage to keep moving forward. The road was long, but with each step, she was rediscovering her strength. The first light of dawn crept over the hills as Clara opened her eyes. The fire from the previous night had died down to glowing embers, leaving a soft warmth that mingled with the fresh morning air. She stretched slowly, feeling the ache of muscles stiff from the long ride and restless sleep. The world outside the clearing was quiet and calm, a gentle contrast to the fear and chaos she had faced in the town. The rising sun cast golden rays across the fields, and for the first time in days, Clara felt a sense of peace begin to settle in her chest. Jacob was already awake, tending to the horse and checking their supplies. He moved with careful efficiency, making sure the animal had enough to eat and drink, and that their small pack of provisions was in order. When he noticed Clara stirring, he offered her a warm smile. "Good morning," he said, his voice calm and reassuring. "Did you sleep well?" Clara nodded, though she knew her sleep had been shallow and full of dreams that reminded her of the night she had lost everything. I slept okay," she admitted. There was something comforting in Jacob's presence, something steady and reliable that made her feel safer than she had felt in a long time. "Good," Jacob said. "Today we'll reach my home. It's not far from here, and you'll have a place to rest properly. You'll be able to wash, eat, and start thinking about what comes next." Clara felt a mixture of relief and nervousness. The idea of a home, a real place to be safe, filled her with hope, but it also made her realize how much she had lost. Her small house in town, her possessions, and the life she had been building were gone. She would have to start over. The thought was daunting, but Jacob's calm presence reminded her that she wouldn't have to face it alone. They packed their few belongings and mounted the horse, setting off once more. The morning air was crisp, carrying the scent of grass and wildflowers. The path wound through gentle hills, and the sunlight danced across the fields in patches of gold. Clara tried to focus on the beauty around her, letting it distract her from the memories that still lingered from the night she had been robbed. Each mile felt like a small step away from fear and toward safety. As they rode, Jacob spoke quietly, sharing details about his home and life. "It's a small place," he explained. "Nothing fancy, but it's safe and warm. There's food, clean water, and a garden. You'll be able to rest without worry." Clara listened, appreciating his calm way of speaking. His words were simple, but they carried reassurance. She began to imagine what it might be like to have a roof over her head, a soft bed to sleep in, and the simple comforts of a safe home. The thought made her heart swell with a cautious optimism she hadn't felt in days. After a few hours, the path led them to a small homestead nestled at the edge of a forest. Smoke rose from the chimney, curling into the sky, and the sound of animals in the yard gave the place a lively, welcoming atmosphere. Clara's eyes widened at the sight. It wasn't a grand mansion or a place filled with luxury, but it was warm, inviting, and full of life. A place where she could finally feel safe. Jacob helped her down from the horse and led her inside. The house smelled of fresh bread and wood smoke, comforting and familiar in a way that made Clara's heart ache with relief. He guided her to a small room that would be hers for as long as she needed. It had a simple bed, a clean blanket, and a window that let in the morning light. "Here," Jacob said gently. "This is yours. Rest, clean up, and eat. You've been through a lot, and you need to regain your strength." Clara sat on the edge of the bed, overwhelmed by the kindness she was being shown. She had been left with nothing, yet here was someone offering her comfort, safety, and even a small room of her own. It was more than she had expected or hoped for, and for a moment she let herself simply breathe and absorb the feeling of being cared for. Over the next few hours, Clara began the slow process of rebuilding herself. She washed her face and hands, feeling the grime of the past night wash away. She changed into clean clothes Jacob had set aside, feeling a sense of dignity return with each layer of fabric. The simple acts of cleaning and changing brought a sense of control back into her life, small victories that reminded her she could still take care of herself. Jacob prepared a meal while Clara rested. The aroma of fresh bread and vegetables filled the room, making her stomach rumble despite the stress of the previous days. When he set the food before her, he encouraged her to eat slowly, to let the warmth of the meal comfort her. Clara took small bites, savoring the taste and the sense of normalcy it brought. For the first time in days, she felt safe enough to relax and allow herself to enjoy something simple. After the meal, Jacob suggested they sit outside for a while. The sun was warm on their faces, and a gentle breeze carried the scent of wildflowers and grass. Clara watched the animals in the yard, chickens pecking at the ground, a horse grazing peacefully, and felt a quiet sense of belonging. It was a simple life, but it was one filled with stability and kindness. "You've been through a lot," Jacob said softly, "but you're strong. You've already taken the hardest steps, leaving the town, trusting someone you didn't know. That takes courage." Clara nodded, feeling a lump in her throat. I never thought I could be brave," she admitted, "but I had no choice. I had to keep moving, or I would have stayed in fear forever." Jacob smiled, a gentle, encouraging expression. Bravery doesn't always mean fighting. Sometimes it's about taking the next step, even when you're scared. And you did that. You kept going, and that's what matters. For the rest of the day, Clara explored the small homestead. She walked through the garden, touched the soft fur of the animals, and took in the simplicity of the house. Each moment brought a sense of calm she hadn't felt in days. The fear and panic from the previous night still lingered, but it was softened by the warmth and safety of Jacob's home. She began to imagine what the future might hold, thinking about the possibility of working again, meeting new people, and building a life that was her own. Jacob gave her space to adjust, while remaining nearby to offer support when needed. He never rushed her, never pressured her to do more than she could handle. His patience and understanding were like a balm to her frayed nerves, helping her rebuild not just her body but her spirit. As evening approached, Jacob built a small fire outside, and they sat together in silence, watching the sun dip behind the hills. The sky turned shades of pink and orange, reflecting in Clara's eyes. She felt a quiet gratitude for the journey that had brought her here, for the kindness of a stranger who had become a guide, and for the hope that was slowly growing inside her. "I don't know how to ever repay you," Clara said softly, breaking the comfortable silence. "You didn't have to help me, and yet you did. You gave me so much." Jacob shook his head. "You don't have to repay me. The world works better when we help each other. Today, it was my turn to help. Tomorrow, you'll find your own way to give kindness to someone else. That's enough." Clara nodded, feeling a warmth spread through her chest. She realized that life could still hold goodness, even after loss. The events of the past days had been terrifying, but they had also shown her the strength of the human spirit, both her own and Jacob's. She felt a sense of determination to reclaim her life, to move forward with courage, and to find joy in the simple things once more. That night Clara lay in the small bed, feeling the warmth of the blanket and the safety of the house. She thought about the journey she had taken, the kindness she had received, and the small victories she had achieved just by surviving. She knew the challenges still awaited her, that rebuilding a life from nothing would not be easy. But she also knew that she had taken the hardest steps, and that was something no one could take away from her. For the first time in what felt like forever, Clara slept peacefully, her mind free from the fear that had haunted her. She dreamed not of the past, but of the possibilities ahead, a life filled with hope, kindness, and the quiet strength she had discovered within herself. The days that followed were filled with quiet routines and small victories. Clara slowly adjusted to life at Jacob's homestead, discovering that safety and kindness could exist even after the fear and pain she had endured. Each morning began with the sun rising over the hills, spilling warm light across the fields and trees. Clara would wake to the sounds of birds singing, the gentle neighing of the horse, and the soft rustle of leaves in the breeze. It was a world far removed from the empty streets and shadows of the town she had left behind. Jacob was always nearby, offering guidance when needed, but never intruding on her space. He helped her find confidence in simple tasks, feeding the animals, tending to the garden, preparing meals. But he also allowed her to take the lead, encouraging her to make decisions and trust herself. Clara discovered that these small acts, which she might have once thought ordinary, were powerful steps toward reclaiming her independence. Each day brought a sense of accomplishment that slowly healed the emptiness she had felt. The first time she laughed in days, Clara realized how much she had missed the simple joy of living without fear. Jacob had been telling a story about a mischievous goat that had stolen his hat, and despite herself she giggled at the image. The sound startled her at first. It had been so long since she had allowed herself such carefree moments, but it quickly became a comfort. Laughter, she realized, was a way of telling herself that she could survive, that she could feel joy even after trauma. In the afternoons, Clara would walk along the dirt paths that wound through the hills surrounding the homestead. Sometimes she would carry a basket to gather fresh vegetables from the garden. Other times she would simply wander, letting her mind wander as well. The open fields and endless sky became a canvas for her thoughts, a place where she could reflect on her past, her fears, and her hopes for the future. It was during these walks that she began to notice a quiet strength within herself, a resilience that had been buried beneath fear and uncertainty. Jacob noticed her growing confidence and offered encouragement without words. His quiet presence, the steady rhythm of his daily life, and his gentle guidance showed her that strength was not always loud or aggressive. It could be patient, consistent, and full of compassion. Clara began to internalize this lesson, realizing that she didn't need to rush, didn't need to force herself to be perfect. Recovery was a journey, and she could take it one step at a time. One day, as they sat together near the garden, Clara spoke softly, her voice filled with thought. "I never thought I would feel safe again," she admitted. "I thought fear would always follow me, that I would always remember that night. But I think I'm beginning to feel like myself again." Jacob nodded, offering a small, encouraging smile. "It's normal to carry the past with you," he said, "but it doesn't have to define you. Every day you take steps forward, you are choosing life, courage, and hope over fear. That's something no one can take away from you." Clara felt a warmth in her chest at his words. They were simple, yet they carried a truth that she needed to hear. For so long she had felt powerless, as if her life had been completely shaped by events beyond her control. Now she realized that she still had choices. She could decide how to move forward, how to shape her days, and how to rebuild her life on her own terms. As the weeks passed, Clara began to take on more responsibilities around the homestead. She tended the garden, cared for the animals, and even started cooking meals with Jacob's guidance. Each task, no matter how small, became a symbol of her resilience. She had survived fear, found safety, and was now learning to thrive. The physical work strengthened her body, while the quiet routines strengthened her mind and spirit. Clara also began to plan for her future. She thought about returning to town, not to live there immediately, but to reconnect with friends and make arrangements for work. She considered learning new skills, perhaps helping in the local community in ways that could empower her and others. These plans gave her a sense of purpose, a reason to look forward rather than dwell on the past. Jacob supported her quietly, offering advice only when she asked for it. He never pushed her beyond her comfort zone, allowing her to make decisions and take responsibility for her own life. This respect for her autonomy became a cornerstone of her healing. She realized that safety wasn't just a place. It was also the trust and freedom to make choices without fear of judgment or harm. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, Clara and Jacob sat by the fire. The warmth of the flames and the gentle sounds of the countryside created a sense of peace that Clara had not felt in a long time. She watched the stars appear one by one, twinkling in the deepening sky, and felt a quiet gratitude for the journey that had brought her here. "I've learned a lot since that night," Clara said softly, "about fear, about trust, and about myself. I never knew I could be so strong, even when I felt so helpless." Jacob nodded, his gaze calm and steady. "Strength isn't about never being afraid," he said. "It's about moving forward, even when fear is present. You've done that, and you continue to do it every day." Clara felt tears welling up, but this time they were not tears of fear or sadness. They were tears of relief, gratitude, and hope. She had survived a terrifying night, found safety, and learned to trust and care for herself again. The journey had been long and difficult, but it had also shown her the power of resilience, kindness, and the quiet strength of human connection. In the days that followed, Clara began to share her story with those she trusted. She spoke about her experiences, the fear she had felt, and the courage it had taken to move forward. She found that by sharing, she could help others understand that even in the darkest moments, there was a way to find hope and safety. Her story became a source of inspiration, not just for herself, but for those around her. Clara also began to dream again. She thought about the life she wanted to build, filled with purpose, kindness, and meaningful connections. She considered ways to help others, to create safety and support in her community, and to live a life that reflected the strength she had discovered within herself. Each day she took small steps toward these dreams, confident that she had the resilience to overcome challenges and embrace opportunities. Jacob remained a steady presence, offering guidance, support, and quiet companionship. Their bond was not one of dependence, but of mutual respect and trust. He had helped her find safety and strength, and in turn, she had grown in ways that allowed her to reclaim her life. Their connection was a reminder that kindness, compassion, and understanding could transform even the most difficult experiences into opportunities for growth and hope. As the months passed, Clara flourished. She regained her confidence, her independence, and her sense of purpose. The memories of that night never fully disappeared, but they no longer held the power to control her. She had faced fear, found safety, and learned to trust herself and others once more. She had reclaimed her life piece by piece with patience, courage, and determination. On a quiet evening, as the sun set behind the hills and the sky turned shades of pink and gold, Clara stood at the edge of the homestead, looking out over the fields. She felt a deep sense of gratitude for the journey she had taken, the kindness she had received, and the strength she had discovered within herself. The fear that had once threatened to consume her had been replaced with hope, resilience, and a renewed sense of purpose. "I made it," she whispered to herself, a soft smile on her face. "I really made it." The journey had been long and difficult, but it had also been filled with lessons, growth, and moments of unexpected kindness. Clara knew that life would continue to bring challenges, but she was no longer afraid. She had found the courage to move forward, the strength to rebuild, and the wisdom to appreciate the beauty and kindness that existed in the world. In the warmth of Jacob's homestead, surrounded by the quiet beauty of nature, Clara had not just survived, she had learned to thrive. She had discovered that even after fear and loss, life could be full of hope, joy, and the quiet strength that comes from resilience and human connection. And for the first time in a long time, she felt truly at home, both in the world and within herself.